Hola, mujeres. Welcome back to the podcast. I am excited to introduce our new guest, Victoria. She is the founder of Latina Owned Collective. And I'm going to let her introduce herself because this episode is going to be amazing. Victoria, welcome to the podcast.
Lucy, thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate your time. I have been following you on Instagram and on LinkedIn for quite a while. So this is such an honor and a privilege. So muchas gracias por tenerme aquí.
Now, let's dive into questions that we normally ask the guests. And the first one is, how did you grow up and what was your relationship with money?
Okay. So I grew up here in the United States. I was born in La Ciudad de Mexico, and my parents moved here when I was one. So I grew up in the mountains of Colorado. And I had a very traditional childhood. My dad worked. He was a pilot for United Airlines. My mom was actually a pilot as well. But when we moved to the United States, she stayed home to take care of me. Growing up, the relationship I had with money was observing the dynamic of my parents, which my dad left the house to go fly planes to make money. My mom stayed home, took care of me in the house, and spent the money. So to me, and of course, I didn't realize this until many years later. To me, the relationship that women had with money was that we were the ones who were supposed to spend it, and the men were the ones who were supposed to make it. And my dad was a very traditional hombre mexicano de Guadalajara, Jalisco, very, pues, machista tradicional, right? Where he's, I make the money y la mujer se queda en casa a criar. Y so when I got married young for the first time. Obviously, I brought that dynamic into my first marriage. And it wasn't until I became a wife at a fairly young age for the first time that I started becoming aware of my own money story and aware of the fact that dynamic did not work for my particular relationship. And so that was my old story.
Okay, now we want to know because I'm like, we're chismosos. Like, why did it not work for you? Was it because you were ambitious, because you wanted to bring the money? Like, why was it, or why didn't it work for you? Because I think it's important to highlight, especially because you mentioned something so important about how sometimes women, or as Latinas, we are really put in this place of, hey, here's the money, figure it out. And oftentimes, el marido has no clue that we're struggling to manage the money. The marido doesn't know that we are dealing with our own money story. So if you're comfortable, you can also tell me, no, knock it off. But if you're comfortable, like, why did it not work for you?
My gosh, I love talking about money and I'm an open book. I think it's a fascinating topic. So it did not work out for me when I got married very young for the first time. I'm currently in my second marriage because although he was the breadwinner, he wasn't making enough money to sustain both of us. So he was like, pues tienes que trabajar and you want all these nice things, then we need more income. We need more money coming into the household. And I was, wait, what? What do you mean? And so I started working. This was many years ago. I was teaching English in Mexico. I was teaching English at an elementary school, and I was also giving private lessons. And the interesting old habit that I had was that I would make money, but then I just thought it was like mi dinero. I was like, okay, ese es mi dinero para mi ropa. Y este es mi dinero para mis accesorios, like all my girly things. And so it didn't work in that particular dynamic because my dad's salary at United Airlines was enough for him to cover all the expenses so that my mom didn't have to work. So I didn't see her making money. I just saw her administering it at the grocery store, purchasing school supplies and whatnot for me, stuff for the house, stuff for herself. Whereas in my first marriage, I needed to bring in money so that to help with the general expenses. But in my head, I was like, este es mi dinero, which of course I was young and very selfish at that time. So I didn't have this context of, oh, wait, if this is the money I'm earning, es para el hogar, no es nada más para mis accesorios y mi ropa. So that's like the
Yeah.
evolution that I had with my relationship with money.
I was gonna use the word like evolution before you said it. Like it sounds like you had some things to process and see, wait a minute. And I think that all of us have been there, Victoria, like where we're like, es mi dinero. I remember when I first got the job in my abuela and then even my mom had this thing of you have to give me half of your paycheck. That was a
Mm,
cultural expectation. And I remember when I earned my first paycheck and my mom
mhm.
was like, pues la mitad es para mí. I was kind of like you, like it's mi dinero. Don't do
I
anymore.
earned
What
it,
do you
yeah.
mean? But of course, that comes with us not knowing how to make our money work for us. And also the scarcity that a lot of us grew up with when we don't see the positive money management at home with our parents. So thank you for sharing that. Now, you are the founder of Latina Owned Collective,
Yes.
and I wanted to bring you to the podcast for us to talk about what did you decided to launch Latina Owned Collective, and how have you been able to just leverage community not only to help Latinas but also to grow your business and your purpose? Because I know that's part an important thing that we need to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for asking that question. I launched Latina Owned Collective because I found out about the wage gap back in 2020 when we all had so much more time to do a bunch of things. I was just doom scrolling on LinkedIn, just reading a bunch of articles. And then one of the articles I came across on LinkedIn was about the wage gap. And I had no idea. That was the first time I had heard about the wage gap or the wealth gap back in 2020. So I was reading this article and I was horrified. I couldn't even believe it. I couldn't believe that, like, of all the racial groups in the United States, Latinas earn the least amount of money. Like, I was horrified by this information. And I was also, I'm like, seriously? Porque siempre ha sido mi opinión y siempre será mi opinión that us Latinas are worth twice as much. That's just always been my mentality. That's always been my stance. Where I'm like, I look at a Latina and I'm like, Dios mío, she's twice as worthy because she's bilingual, because she's bicultural, and some of us have dual citizenship. So in my head, I'm like, pues like, para mí, that's 2x the value for any
Yeah.
employer. That's 2x the value for any client. Why are we earning the least amount of money? O sea, no me cabe en la mente. This doesn't make the math isn't mathing, right? And I launched this community in the middle of la pandemia because I wanted to bring Latina business owners together. And again, I'm based in Colorado, so this is not nationwide. This is just like local Colorado-based Latinas. I invited a lot of Latina entrepreneurs to this live event that I hosted, and I told them about this wealth gap. And I was like, hey, did you know that this exists? And I was like, let's make sure that we are closing our own wage gap or wealth gap by investing in each other's businesses and circulating that dollar within our own economy. And that's when I started sharing this concept of, if we're gonna do business, let's do business with each other. Si se van a pintar las uñas, váyanse al salón de la amiga que tiene el nail salon. Si se van a cortar el pelo, ve con la amiga that she has her own hair salon. Let's invest in each other's economy. And so we've been doing that. Like, we Colorado-based Latinas have been doing that since 2020. And I would say one of my pride and joys of the community is like watching these women who were at one point strangers become friends and then sometimes become business partners and then collaborate on live events together, collaborate on business deals together. And so it's so exciting for me to see that money begin to circulate within our collective, within our group, and to see these women's businesses grow. Like, I'm thinking of one woman, she started in the collective back in 2020. She didn't have her business at all. And now she has like a thriving brick and mortar. And I've seen her growth and her evolution just in estos últimos 4 años. And I'm just like, wow, this is incredible. It's so incredible what we are capable of doing as individuals. But it's so much more incredible what we're capable of doing as a collective, as a unified group.
Yeah, and I love that. Now, you just mentioned the wage gap and the wealth gap, and a lot of us, because I'm one of them, that I didn't know it existed until for me it was 2018 when
Mm,
I left my corporate career and I came across an article where another Latina career coach was talking about it. And I was like, wait, what is this? What? I never heard of it.
yeah.
And that is why it's so important that we really seek community. In
Yes.
this podcast is about community because we don't know what we don't know. Oftentimes we are told that, hey, this is all we have to pay you, or this is all you can earn. And we take that as face value rather
Mhm.
than asking questions because nos da penita. Like, oh, no quiero que piensen que no sé nada. But you
Mhm.
saw this opportunity. And now I want to ask you had the idea, okay, you had your why, you had the idea, but how did you start reaching out to people? Because I think that for a lot of people, that is the hard part, like putting themselves out there to build a community. So can you walk us through the steps or the strategy you had to build your Latina Owned Collective?
Yeah, I would say that it wasn't hard for me to reach out or anything because I didn't make it about me per se. I made it about the community. I made it about the collective. I made it about these women. It was a we, not a me. And so I think that's the step number one in order to get out of our own way is put the focus out onto the world. Put your focus out, direct it out towards your objective, towards your mission, towards your community in this case, or my community. So that was the first thing that I did. And then I just started hosting a lot of live events. I started being very intentional about looking for maybe brick and mortars that were owned by local Latinos. And I was just like, hey, can we collaborate? So for example, I'll give you an example. There's the big brewery here in Denver called Raíces Brewing Company. So I did a big event inside of Raíces Brewing Company. This is back in 2021. I would say that was probably the first major live event that I did and reached out to a lot of these Latinas who are business owners. And I was just like, hey, come and set up your business, un mercadito. And we were like maybe, no sé, no me acuerdo, quizás 10, quizás 12 vendors on site selling their items. And then I facilitated a panel. I interviewed 3 different Latinas in completely different industries on stage. So it was like my way of giving them visibility, like amplifying them, giving their business giving them an opportunity to tell their business story. And so I just started doing, I would say, a lot of live events and being intentional about where I was doing these live events. And live events are an excellent opportunity to connect face to face. And then así, o sea, así creciendo la comunidad. And then I started doing also workshops. And yeah, that's how the community just started growing organically.
And I love what you said. Like, it wasn't about me because you're right. A lot of times when we want to do something, we have fears, right? We all have fears. I have had so many fears, like fear of starting a podcast, fear of launching my program, now the fear of writing a book, and all of this. This fear is always going to be there. But when we think about the impact that is bigger than us, that's when fear becomes almost a tool that we can leverage to say, you know what? It's not about me. It's about the
Correct.
community that I want to serve. So thank you so much for saying that. Now let's talk about time, right? Because a lot of people say, if I want to build a community, I need to spend 5 hours, 10 hours, 24 hours a week. How much time do you spend nurturing the community and supporting the community that you have through Latina Owned Collective?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. The truthful answer is I don't know how many hours, but if I had to guess, oh gosh, probably no less than 10. And it's because there's so many ways that one can nurture the community. For example, you can nurture your community by having conversations like this, right? Like dedicating time to be on someone's podcast. You can nurture your community by having conversations in DMs. Like I can't tell you how many little group texts I have with like different groups where we're like sending each other messages and resources and memes. And so I have so many groups like that. You can nurture community by just commenting on their posts, liking their posts, sharing their posts. If they are hosting a live event, if they're participating in a market, like sharing it to your Instagram stories. That's one like super positive thing that social media has done. It's made it so much easier to connect. I also spend a fair amount of time like going to a lot of networking events and connecting with people in real life. And so I will be honest and say it does take time. You do have to be very intentional and very authentic and very genuine about it because I think any of us can feel when someone's being inauthentic and when someone's just there for a transaction. Humans are very intelligent. We're all very intelligent. We're all very intuitive. So if you want to build a community, I would say do it with, I like to say, con el corazón en las manos. Do it authentically, do it vulnerably, do it because you genuinely care and not because you're wanting to build a community to make a bunch of money. That was never my intention. In fact, I didn't profit anything from my community for the first 4 years because I was just doing it para conectar y para servir. I just wanted to be of service. And I think when you approach community building from a place of being of service, it just grows naturally, it grows organically because people can feel that authentic energy from you.
And I love that. I love that because, yeah, profit is important for a business. Nurturing and providing value
Yes.
to any community that you want to create is so important. And also, I'm thinking of those people that maybe don't have as much time as you do or as I do. They can also build an email community where they just start sharing tips for free through a podcast. There's so many things. And I recently hosted my first in-person event and I was very nervous because I used to be in hospitality, so I was big on events, but of course I had like huge budgets to do these events and with my business is okay, this is the budget that I have, but I want to dive into some of the lessons that the hard lessons, right? Because it's also important to keep things real, especially with the listeners. What are some of the things that you wish you knew about building a community before you got started?
Ooh, that's a good question. What are some things I wish I knew? Okay, so here's one that like immediately popped up. I was not intentional at all from 2020. Okay, so from 2020 to 2023, I wasn't building, I had no strategy. I would just meet a girl and I'd be like, you're cool. I love your business. Y ya, como que nos conectamos en Instagram and that's it. It wasn't until last year that my mentor, he said to me something I will never forget. He's like, you and I love the work we do so much, we would do it for free. But I'm going to tell you something. This is my mentor speaking. I'm going to tell you something that I told my wife. This is him speaking to his wife. I love the work. He's a coach. He's a leadership coach and a business coach. I love the work I do so much that I do it for free. But I promised my wife that I wouldn't. And so he said that to me. I know that you love the work that you do so much that you do it for free, but I know that you probably promised your husband that you wouldn't do it for free, that you wouldn't work for free. But your time is valuable. Your talent is valuable. And so I think I was not valuing myself. I was not valuing my time. I was not valuing what I was bringing to the table. And I was also not valuing the results that I was creating for my community. I was doing a bunch of stuff for free. So for community I was building. So when my mentor shared this phrase with me, I was like, okay, and this is a phrase I'm so excited to share with your listeners because this is a phrase that changed my life. Victoria, you are allowed to have an income and make an impact at the same time. I was so focused on making an impact that I completely forgot. I shouldn't say forgot. It wasn't even on my radar to make an income. So I think that is like the number one thing I want to share with your listeners is please know that if you're building a community, you are having a tremendous impact on that community. That ripple effect is huge and you deserve to be compensated for that. And you can hold both energies at the same time. So that's when I decided to launch the membership-based portion of Latina Owned Collective was last September when we launched the membership community. And I've been operating it ever since. So I would say that's probably the biggest lesson. I wish I would have known my value at the beginning when I first launched this community.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And if we go back to the reason why you originally started Latina Owned Collective was because you wanted to help bridge the Latina wage gap and help
Correct.
the bridge the wealth gap. And when
Yes.
we charge for our work, we are becoming a solution rather than continue to be a problem because you're not the only one, by the way. A lot of us struggle with charging. A lot of us are like, I want to help my community, right?
Yes.
And sometimes we forget that when we don't charge for our services, we are literally contributing to that gap to widen even more. So I appreciate you being honest with us. Now, I want to ask you, how did you choose who gets to be part of your community? Because a lot of people are like, I do want to, there's people out there that are like, I just want everyone. And then there's people that are like, "Oh, I don't want everyone." So how do you decide who should be part of your community?
I love this question because there's definitely a process. So the first step I do is I just have a call. Very much like this, right? I have a conversation. I utilize the first 30 minutes of the call to just learn about this woman, learn about her story, learn about her business, learn about why she started it, and just get a feel for who she is, right? And then the next half of the call, then I explain what the Latina Owned Collective is, how it works, what are the benefits. However, the way that I would say ultimately I decide who is a good fit to be part of the Latino Collective is by the values of the woman, because I share what our core values are of the Latino Collective. And one of the core values is the concept or the idea of collaboration over competition. That I'm very huge on that. I think there's been enough competition among women. There's been enough competition among Latinas specifically. There's been so much gatekeeping, and there's just been a lot of like weird, heavy negative energy surrounding Latina success or Latina wealth building. And I have this belief that we can raise others as we rise ourselves. Like a rising tide raises all ships. Like these are the beliefs or the energies that I was raised with. So these are the core beliefs I hold just as a woman and as a human being. Because I operate from a place of abundance, at least I try to operate from a place of abundance as much as I can. I ultimately make decisions on who is going to be a good fit for the community based on their individual core values. Because if they bring this energy of gatekeeping and scarcity and competition and like this energy that's not, then they're not going to be a good fit. They're not going to the community. The community is probably, I don't want to say my community would never like reject anyone, because the women I attract are incredible women. These are competent, intelligent, kind, collaborative women. And that is ultimately how I end up deciding, is through the phone calls, asking questions, listening, being an excellent listener. I think being in business, you have to be an excellent listener, and finding out if our core values align.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think that's one of the reasons why we connected as well, because you're huge on sharing your why. You're huge on sharing like your cultural values and how much you love being a Latina. And I think that's why we connected and we clicked right away, because I was like, oh my God, we share values. So I think that's also important to mention, that when you want to build a community to support other women, it's important to talk about you and your values, because like
Yes.
you made a post about your mom, and
Yes.
I remember reading the post and I was like, how
Oh,
beautiful this is. But sometimes we feel that in order to put our message out there, we have to like be less Latina. And with you, I see like your Latinidad like through your words and everything that you do. And so that's another way too, that you can bring the right people when you share your core values. And yeah, people will come to you without you having to chase them. Now, you talk about membership, which means that people had to pay you to be part of a community. How
yes.
do you decide what is the investment or the cost that you want to put out there for people to join your community?
How did I decide? Like, how did I decide what
On the pricing
price
or
of
the
the
investment?
membership?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay. So that is a decision I made last year when I launched the membership portion. Gosh, how did I decide that? I think I decided it by, okay, most of us have businesses that are, let's say, between 1 and 5 years old. So they are like baby or toddler businesses. So most of us are not making millions of dollars per year. So I wanted the price point to be at an accessible place. I didn't want it to be so out of reach. So I picked a price that I'm like, okay, as a small business owner, as a micro business owner, as some solopreneur, I'm like, what would feel accessible to me? What would feel accessible to most of the women in the community so that they get the value of being a part of a business community, but it's not going to break their business bank. Like they have a slow month and they have to still make the membership payment. Like what is that number? Yeah, that's a great question, because it can be so difficult to price your services, or in this case, this is the first time I was pricing a membership based community. I'd never done that before. I thought of the women in my community. I thought of, I'm like, who are these women? What are their businesses? What do I know about them? And what feels accessible? Because we're all at the same stage in business, if you will. So I picked what, in my opinion, was a price point that felt accessible to most. That's how I decided. It wasn't like a crazy math equation. It was just, it's one of those know your audience, know your community. Like, who are you speaking with? My community is not male investment bankers. My community is Latinas who have businesses between the years of 0 to 5, and they're
Yeah.
most likely operating these businesses by themselves. Like maybe they have a team of, I don't know, 1 to 2 to 3, but we're all in the similar stage. So knowing that information is how I picked what I
Sounds to me like you also had to do some market research to identify the businesses, make sure the values align. And then, yeah, as you're saying, like, how can I make this accessible? And I also want to say accessible doesn't mean free, and it doesn't mean that
totally.
you're offering a good one, because sometimes
Exactly.
a lot of people are like, well, if I charge, I don't know, $47, it's going to be like a crappy offer. When I
Mm.
remember the day when I invested $47 in a membership, and it completely changed my life. Like, it was actually better than the one where I paid $10,000. And so sometimes the price can be low, but the membership or the benefits of it can be huge. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now, I'm gonna come back to like money and wealth and all of that, because we love talking about money. But what is one investment that you made in yourself that has completely just changed the way you show up, and also maybe has benefited your business?
Oh gosh, an investment I made in myself. There's been a lot. I would say an investment I made in a huge, I'm trying to think of the one that has made the most impact. I would say the investment I've made in myself that has made the most impact is giving myself a yearly opportunity to solo travel and giving myself a yearly opportunity to reconnect with my essence. So I've been married for 15 years. I have a son who just turned 13 years old. And when we women are wearing so many hats, we're wearing the wife hat, the mother hat, the entrepreneur hat, la hija, la hermana, la amiga, la tía, all the hats that we wear, we can get so detached from our essence. Like, who are we? What do we want? Why are we here? And I started solo traveling 10 years ago because I recognized that I was becoming detached from my essence and I needed to reconnect with myself. And obviously, traveling isn't cheap. And so, this yearly solo travel experience that I've gifted myself has been pivotal, has been fundamental, like critical to me figuring out who I am, what are my values, what do I stand for, why am I here, what's my purpose? Because I have this time. Like, time is so precious. It is our most precious gift, I believe. And when I have this time, I step away anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. And this time helps to rebalance and recalibrate and recenter. And I'm able to, if my ship is doing crazy things, I'm able to like course correct and adjust my ship and be like, okay, we're sailing that way. But if I'm running around like a headless chicken, I can't see straight. And so that's why I gift myself this opportunity. Neo's is solo traveling, which is like, I'm so excited. I'm going to do something big next year. I don't know where I'm going, but I pick a new place. I pick a new place every year. And it was on one of these solo traveling trips that I got the inspiration to start one of my businesses. My husband and I launched Apapacho Cacao. It's a vegan chocolate company. We sell organic drinking chocolate, así como estilo chocolate abuelita, pero saludable. And then it was also on one of these solo trips that I learned how to love myself. I didn't know, A, that I was allowed to love myself, and B, I didn't know how much it would positively impact my life and my business to fully love myself, accept myself, like myself, and forgive myself. And so these trips by far have been the biggest investment I've made in myself, the biggest and best investment.
That, because you're one of the very few mujeres that actually do that. Like, I do it too. Sometimes when I decided to, I don't know, just go away for a week or even a weekend, I'm not gonna lie, like at the beginning, it was kind of like, oh my gosh. And my husband is very hands-on. Like, he's like the perfect dad to watch them and take care of them. But I do remember the time when I told him, hey, I need a week away,
Yeah.
because I was finishing the book that I'm launching. And he's very supportive. He's, yeah, lo que tú necesites, just go ahead. And I remember telling my mom and my sister, and they're like,
Yeah.
you're right. Like we don't give ourselves permission to detach or stop wearing the hats because culturally we're always expected to be there for everyone. So
Yes.
as you're saying that, and even the way you're sharing it and how you look like when you're sharing it, I'm like, let's do more solo traveling because we need that so much. Now, Victoria, on that note, what is your definition of wealth?
Ooh, okay. My definition of wealth is having the freedom, and this is time freedom, this is location freedom, and this is a financial freedom to do and be what your heart or your soul came here to do and to be. And so if we are able to gift ourselves that time freedom, that location freedom, and that financial freedom to create that which is within ourselves to bring forth, oh my gosh, that to me is wealth. I don't know what else would be more worthy of that word wealth than to have that absolute control of our time, of our location, and our money to bring forth
Yeah.
what's in our
And
heart.
time is non-refundable. So we really need to see it as the scarce resource that it is. So I'm so glad that we had this conversation. Thank you for being here. And now tell us, how can we support Latina Owned Collective? And of course, brag about your business too, your family business.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So thank you so much, Lucy, for asking. So you can connect with Latina Owned Collective on Instagram, just at Latina Owned Collective. And our business, Apapacho Cacao, it's apapacho_cacao. And we are in the process of launching what I'm referring to as Apapacho 2.0 because we launched Apapacho 1.0. We sold out of our inventory. And my husband and I are in the ideation of that second phase of Apapacho. So yeah, that's where you can connect with both of these businesses and these communities online. And yeah, thank you so much, Lucy. This is such a gift. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of you and the brand and business you've built. I love following your content. I think you are such a light to our community and that are
Thank you.
standing like confidently in their worth, that are standing confidently in their power, wealth that we're all worthy of having.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And yeah, I believe in the power of using our economic power to help ourselves, or help our family, and most importantly, help our community. So, mujeres, make sure that you check the show notes to follow Victoria, and I will see you all next week. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.